to the Author to Authority podcast. And today I am so pleased to have on the show with me Karen Hewitt. Now, Karen is the author of Employee Confidence, The New Rules of Engagement. And this book was shortlisted in the leadership category of the Business Book Awards for 2019. And you know what? She teaches corporate professionals to fast track their confidence to get the results that they need, and advises organizations on how to create cultures where employee confidence thrives. So welcome to the show, Karen.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here, Kim. Thank you.
Well, we are so glad to have you because you know what? That is such an important topic. But just before we get into that today, I just want to remind the listeners that I have an amazing Facebook group actually called Author to Authority. And not only can you find the podcast episodes there, we also do a lot of training on writing. We have fun in the group. We teach you how to position yourself as the authority, whether you're an author or not. So there's just a lot of really great hints, tips, and just practical things on there that just going to help you take your business to the next level. So go onto Facebook and search Author to Authority and just answer a couple quick questions and you'll be a part of the group. So Karen, I want the listeners to know a little bit about you before we get into the topic for today.
Okay, sounds good. So what would you like to know? Where will I start?
Well, what really kind of happened in your life that led you to writing Employee Confidence?
Yeah, so I think that's a really good place to start because I guess it was a turning point in my life a couple of years ago. I'd always wanted to write a book, but sometimes, you know, you have great plans in mind and then you have a chance meeting with someone or something happens a bit by accident that steers you in the right direction. So at the time I was working in a large corporate a couple of years ago. I had it on my radar that I wanted to write a book, but I was actually writing another book, which has now become my second book in progress. And I was interviewing a lot of successful women on the topic of confidence. And this was really interesting because I was looking at my own confidence journey as well. And I was also having a bit of a hard time in my day job and feeling like I wasn't really being listened to, feeling like I was an authority in my subject, but through various restructuring and different events, I wasn't really being listened to. And then one of the people that I was interviewing, who just happened to be an Olympic athlete, I asked her a question about how she sort of turned her confidence dips into successes. And she told me that she tried to turn every negative into a positive. So when she didn't get the results she wanted and her confidence was knocked, she threw herself into her training and thought, how can I really overcompensate for this? So she really took action. And I thought, well, this is really interesting because, you know, I really need to get myself listened to as an authority. And how can I do that for me? So I decided that writing the book then, starting right there and now, was my way of channeling the negative into a positive. So that really kick-started me, and she'll never know that she inspired me in that way. I must tell her that she inspired me in that way. But I thought that's my negative into a positive. And I also discovered later, I did a bit of reading on jiu-jitsu, the martial art, and apparently that's what they do in jiu-jitsu. They take the negative energy of the opponent that's being used against them, and then they turn it into a positive. So it's some kind of leadership jiu-jitsu that she was doing and I was doing. And then I decided that I would write the book. So that's how it got me started on the journey.
That is pretty cool. That is pretty cool. So when we talk about confidence, because this is a big part of your journey, what would you say was, when did you realize that you didn't have the confidence that you wanted?
Well, I realized it from a very young age, in that, so I had a stutter when I was age 11, which left me sort of later on in my teens. But I think it marked me in that I because when you're at school and you've got a stutter at that age and people laugh at you, your obvious reaction is to just stop talking. So you stop talking, you lose your voice in a way. So whilst I was good academically, I held myself back a bit by not speaking out in class. And then that started to have its impact when I started going for interviews for jobs. So I got through university, struggled with confidence as well. And also I'm a natural introvert. So as well as sort of losing my voice a bit, I was a natural introvert. And then I went for a job interview after I graduated. And for some job interviews, even now, I think you have, so you have your separate individual interview, and then you have like a group assessment exercise when they give you one of those artificial team building exercises. And there are observers around the outside that assess your personality and your leadership skills. And sadly, the conclusion was, quite frankly, then, that I didn't have the personality for the job. I can't remember exactly how the interviewer worded that feedback, but it came across quite brutally to me at age, it was about 22, I think. And I took it to heart for about 10 seconds and then decided, well, if I need a personality, I'm going to get myself a personality. How difficult can it be? So I set off to get myself a personality. So I spent, I guess, the next few decades looking for every opportunity to speak in public, to study what extroverts did, how they could make themselves more credible, more authentic. And I found my own way. I think I navigated my own way to confidence. And I've been able to reflect back now on what model I used. So I don't think I found the quickest route. And I wouldn't recommend my route to get yourself a personality, because we all know we all have a personality. It's just how do you get the best of your personality? But I think having looked at my model and interviewed a lot of confident women as well who've been successful, because I think confidence does come with age. You know, I feel able now to fast track some of it for other people. You know, if there are people in their 20s that want some, you know, help with their confidence, I feel there's got to be a quicker journey than mine.
Well, two comments on that. The joys of being 22 when anything is absolutely possible in life. And kudos to you. And you know what? I think you're right. There are some things that come with age. And, you know, I'm in my late 40s, and I think some of my confidence has come because I just don't really care what people think about me anymore. You know, it doesn't, you know, if someone likes me or doesn't like me, you know, likes what I say or don't say, whatever. It's not that I don't care about the person. I just don't care about their opinion of me. And I think that really frees you when you're not held back by that anymore.
Yeah, and I think so. So there's a lot we learn with age, and with age comes wisdom. But there also, I realise, looking back, there's some techniques that I deployed, and, you know, whether I could have done them in a different order, because when I speak to other women as well, they're using the same strategies, but calling them something different, maybe. Everyone sort of found their confidence in a different way. And also, I think when you're younger, you think that everyone is confident, you know, either confident or you're not. And then you realise later on that actually, it doesn't matter if you're the most confident person in the world, everyone will have a confidence dip. Yes. In some point in their life for a different reason.
Yeah. And I think yeah, it's not always even just a confidence dip. I think it's just as we enter each new stage, you know, and we're trying new things, you know, nobody is confident when they try something new, you know, so I don't think it's a confidence dip. It's just building that confidence in that new level, that new thing, right? You grow into it. And I think as well is that you are right, is that it's a journey. It's not something where one day, oh, you're not confident, and one day you are confident. It just kind of, it grows a little bit. But you know what? It's probably a little bit off topic to our main topic today, but you said that you had some strategies just for building confidence in general. I'd love to hear a couple of them.
Yeah, so I've got a few that I've thought about. There are so many, but I think preparation is a massive part of confidence. I think the more prepared you are for something, a situation that might put you out of your comfort zone or might knock your confidence, the better you feel. And interviewing some of the successful women as well, they talk about that, and the Olympians talk about that. The more prepared, you know, the sports stars do the visualization. And I've developed a model for preparing for any kind of conversation, because I think often people feel underconfident about having what they perceive to be a difficult conversation. I could never do that, whether it's I could never be on a podcast, or I could never be videoed, or I could never speak in front of a room full of people. I think the more, you know, if you can go through a process, or I can never ask for a pay rise, I can never ask for a promotion, I can never convince my boss because my boss is so difficult. So those kind of scenarios, you can learn to coach yourself through them. So you've looked at it from every different angle, and you come up with a win-win proposal. You're able to counter objections. So you've done all this in your head beforehand, so that you can get the result you want from, you know, a conversation that you might have perceived to be difficult before. So you can win at everything, really, I think, if you really want to. So there's a bit of sort of sales in there, a bit of preparation. So that's one of the things that's in my book under strategic confidence, because I think that is strategic. Yeah. You know, it's not just about how you feel inside, how you present yourself. You have to be a bit strategic as well, a bit clever, I think, about getting people to see the best of you.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what, when I think it comes to speaking, and this is something I could speak to because it's a worldwide organization, you know, there's Toastmasters, and people don't realize what Toastmasters is about. And it's basically just, you know, a nonprofit organization, not charity, but just a nonprofit, that you can join a local group, and it teaches you just how to speak at whatever level you want to speak at. So whether it's just learning how to speak in a crowd of people and feel confident about it, all the way up to being on the biggest stages. You know, Toastmasters has trainings and feedback, and everybody just starts out just sharing your story. So, you know, if anybody just wants that little bit of extra confidence and you want some really personal support. Now, I'm going to tell you, you got to go talk to Karen first, okay? Because she's got lots to share with you today. But, you know, Karen doesn't live necessarily where you live. So Toastmasters is a really great organization. I'm a part of it myself. I could testify that it has been an amazing, incredible support for me as, you know, I've gone from, you know, not being able to speak on stages to now speaking on stages, doing this podcast, doing online training. So it is a good resource. But Karen, I know you also brought with you today, or created or thought of, some really amazing hints and tips and advice that you want to share with my listeners today. So I'm going to let you have the floor to share with what you brought for us.
Yeah, okay. So I guess that was my number one tip about preparing and learning strategies to prepare. And sometimes you might have to work with a coach for that, or to find out what other people do to make yourself feel more confident, because there's nothing that's going to shake your confidence more than feeling unprepared for something. And you can handle any conversation and get what you want if you do that. So that was number one. Number two, I guess one thing I've learned along the way, and I've put it under external confidence in my model in the book, is that to influence people and to convince them, they have to believe in you. Mm-hmm. And if you don't believe in yourself, they won't believe in you. So you need to project something across to your audience or to the person sat in front of you through the words you use, the body language, the way you come across, really. And when I was in my 20s, you know, just after the time that I got the feedback, I needed to get myself a personality. So I literally felt like I was acting. So I remember I delivered a conference paper when I was about 28, and I got good feedback, but I know now, looking back, that probably I didn't come across as authentic as I thought I did, because I was basically this sort of shy little person on the sidelines that just got up and just behaved in a way that I didn't feel entirely comfortable with. So, you know, if you're being someone else in a, you know, any kind of pressure situation, then that's not comfortable for you, and other people can see right through it. And I learned, as I did more work on myself, on my internal confidence, I learned that actually it's best to not be somebody else, to be yourself, but just dial yourself up a bit, be a bigger version of you, which I guess is what I'm doing now, because I'm speaking louder than I normally would. I'm probably gesturing a little bit. I know the podcast listeners can't see this, but you can hear it through my voice. I'm being slightly bigger than I normally would, because people want to be convinced, and they want to be convinced through the way you present yourself. And I was one of these people as well that got told I didn't smile a lot when I was younger, so I tried to work on that. So it's nothing different to what I normally do. I'm just making myself, if I was a TV set, I'd be turning up the volume, turning up the contrast, maybe slowing down the words a bit so I'm a bit more articulate, and taking some pauses. So just be a bigger version of you would be my tip number 2.
Let's just talk about that for a minute, because I think there's a couple of practical things that we can also get into as well. One thing I learned was, when I was feeling nervous and I had to talk to people, is how I planted my feet. When you're nervous, you tend to plant your feet together, which physically makes you unbalanced. So I learned that if you just intentionally stand with your feet about shoulder width apart, at least physically your weight's now balanced. You're physically can be a little bit more confident. And then the other thing I learned was, just pull your shoulders back a little bit, like not, extreme, whatever. But when we're nervous, we tend to hunch in. And so I just learned just to back it up a little bit. And I found those 2 things alone just instantly made me physically feel more comfortable.
Yeah, and the person you're speaking to feels much more comfortable as well, because if you're physically balanced and centered, you come across more balanced and centered, and automatically the person you're with or the audience will just breathe a sigh of relief, because you've not got somebody that's sort of moving around a lot and unbalanced and uncentered. So it calms the rest of the room. So that's a really good point.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a couple other little physical things that maybe people can do, or maybe just like a little mental trick that you could teach?
Yes. I mean, I always, because I think if I've got somebody that has real stage fright, it's often a fear of what the audience is going to think of them. So I try to get them to take the focus off them and put the focus on the audience. And I tell them some stories and get them to think about the times when they've gone into a room, to an audience, and they, as audience members, have been petrified about what's going to happen to them. You think you sometimes turn up for a meeting or a training session, you think, what are they going to get me to do? And I'm nervous, I don't know all these people. So you can actually have a lot of stage fright from the back of the room.
Yes.
So, I've said to people that have got real stage fright, think about taking your focus off you. It's not about what they think of you. It's about how you can make them feel a lot more comfortable. So sometimes just shifting that mindset on how can you offer the people in front of you the best that they're looking for, how can you put them at ease, often switches the brain a little bit from this panic, what's everyone going to think of me?
That is a really good point. And generally as people, we're geared to want to help others, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yes.
And that's an amazing point, because when you take the focus off of yourself and what people are going to think of you, and think of how you can help that person in the back of the room who's maybe really afraid and make them comfortable. Wow, that's an incredible tip. Cool. I gotta remember that one.
Yeah. It often works when they suddenly realize that actually, because they can imagine what it feels like to be scared at the back of the room, because they've been there. So yeah, that helps. And I guess another thought, which is probably I guess a bit more general, I find that when people are in sort of corporate workplaces, they tend to get very attached by certain personality traits that they have. Like, this is who I am, I'm X, Y, and Z, I could never be that, I could never be that. And I think it's really helped me to get ahead, particularly as a woman. And sometimes I coach women around sort of getting ahead. I've worked in a male-dominated environment all my life, so I've studied the differences. And I think we tend to think maybe as a woman we've only got access to female traits. As a man, we've only got access to male traits, but actually it's better to think that all of us, male or female or however we identify, we have access to the whole spectrum of leadership traits, and it doesn't define who you are. And I'll give you an example. Sometimes in life you have to be a little bit assertive, and if you dialed that up, people might see it as aggressive, but there are times when you have to switch it on, even if it's only for 30 seconds, then switch it on again, off again, just to get what you want, but then be able to let go of that and say, well, that's not who I am. It's just what I needed to do in that particular context. Because you often see in a meeting room that you'll have some people that will talk across each other to get their point across. Other people will fade into the background because they'll wait for the pause in the conversation. And that's sometimes considered typically sort of male versus female leadership behavior, but actually getting rid of all of that and saying, well, I can do that as well. But I'm not going to do it. It's not going to be who I am, but I'm just going to do it for 30 seconds. And I've had to do that to get my point across. So rather than staying in your box, allow yourself to look at how other people do things and not let it define you. So I think that's been a bit of an eye-opener for me.
Yeah, and assertive doesn't necessarily mean loud, pushy. To me, assertive just means firm. And like you say, you wait for that pause, and then it's like, okay, here's the truth. Here's how it is. This is, and you just stay firm to that. It's not a matter of, you have to be right or wrong, or you have to argue with people or anything else. It's just a matter of, this needs to be brought out. And I'm firm and I'm waiting for my opportunity. And when I do, I'm just going to say it with confidence.
Yeah, exactly. You can say, I'm sorry, I know I'm speaking over you right now, but I really need to say this. Just please let me speak. So sometimes you've got to do it.
Exactly. So let's switch gears here. Thank you. That was really amazing tips. But let's switch gears here in our last few minutes of the podcast. And let's talk about your book. Okay. So tell me a little bit about your writing journey and what results you've seen personally and professionally since writing it.
Okay. So as I said, I was writing another book when the actual first book idea came up, and I was struggling with momentum. I guess I was starting something and then thinking this isn't very good. Not starting with an overall plan in mind and going back to the beginning. And then I had a bit of an epiphany moment when I watched a recording artist being interviewed on the TV. I can't remember who it was being interviewed. And the interviewee asked, how do you get all your material out for your new album? And he said, well, we just go into the studio for a whole day and we just record as much as we can. We think of quantity, not quality, just as much as we can in that whole day. And then we go back and edit. And I actually realized that's where I was going wrong with the book writing, that I was just stopping and starting, going back to edit, whereas you actually just need to get a first draft out completely. And then, I was thinking about the idea that I wanted to create change in organizations. I wanted them to do things differently, to put confidence on the agenda. I thought a book would be a great platform for me to be that person that could go into organizations. And then I got introduced to Mindy Gibbons-Klein, the book midwife, and she helped me with the process and the accountability. So I was able to focus on my content. I'd already figured out how to get the momentum by then. And so I just focused on my content and my ideas because she really took care of the process and the accountability. So the accountability is massive for the discipline side of it. So, and before I knew it, with just being able to focus on the content, my book was out in 3 months. Well, nice. 3 months from start to finish anyway. So it was a bit of a journey. So, it sounds like it was a really quick journey, but actually it had been a slow one that had been you know, like sort of ashes on a fire. It'd been sort of smouldering for a few
Wow.
years without direction, and then suddenly this big fire lit, and off I was.
That is awesome, Karen. And you know, if any of you are looking for that accountability and support, I have a similar type course. It's called Plan, Produce, and Publish Your Signature Book in 90 Days. And I don't have the link here, so I will put the link in the show notes for you for that, because I don't have it off the top of my brain. But Karen, how can people connect with you?
So I talk a lot about my work on LinkedIn. So I think just looking at linkedin.com/in/Karen-J-Hewitt. And also you can find Employee Confidence, The New Rules of Engagement by Karen J. Hewitt on Amazon and all good bookshops, anywhere where you can find a book. And I love the fact you called it Write Your Signature Book, because it really has become my signature, and that's why I would recommend anyone else thinking about writing a book, wanting a launch platform, do exactly that.
So what results have you seen since writing this book?
I think it's just made me a lot more credible. I thought people would be inspired by my content, and they are, but they're also more inspired by the discipline it takes to write a book, because you have to be able to manage a project from start to finish. You have to be able to look at the big picture and then dive down into the detail. So you become more rounded as an individual, and it's really helped me in the workplace. Through winning the award, it's connected me to a big network of authors. And also it's just opened doors for me in terms of projects, you know, and the projects I really wanted to work on, because the book forces you to establish your niche. Mm-hmm. And be really clear on who you are, what your ideas are, what your model is. And once you've established that, people come to you. It doesn't happen immediately.
Yes.
So you have to be prepared to ride out the confidence dips, but, you know, be prepared that it might take time, but it does happen.
Yeah, like I see the book as sort of, it's two things. It's a marketing tool. So you use it, you know, as that extended business card. But it's also a positioning tool, because as you get the book out there and as people see it, and as, you know, you just keep letting people know about this book, they see your credibility, they read about your credibility, and they're like, oh, wow, she's somebody I want to work with. And they don't always work with you right away. But because you have that book, you know, so many times, like, you know, I've got bookshelves where I've had a book sitting for 5 years or whatever. And I finally noticed the book. I never read it in the first place. I read it and all of a sudden it's like, wow, this is exactly what I need right now. And I got to work with that person. So, you know, like a book is one of those things that, you know, once somebody has that book, you know, it doesn't go to waste. People do not throw out books. You know, even when they get rid of books, they send them to other places where people will buy your books. So, you know, books do not go to waste. And you know, wow, what an incredible journey you have. And I can only see it just getting better and better.
Thank you. Let's hope so. You have to keep believing. And I have to every day work on all the confidence tips that I teach everybody else. I need to walk the talk.
Yep, exactly.
And it works.
Well, thank you so much, Karen, for being on the podcast today. I've enjoyed having you and just talking about confidence. And I know that our listeners are just going to be super excited to be able to use the tips that you have shared. So make sure that you go and you connect with Karen. And this has been the Author to Authority podcast. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you.